Morning. It is my second day back from break. Yesterday I was so incredibly busy I didn't have a chance to vlog at the later part of the day, but I ended up leaving yesterday probably around 5:30 and I was just like so exhausted. But today I am in early because I had my students pick one little word to help them think about some things that they wanted to improve. And basically I just told them, you know, this is something personal to you, something that you can focus on and reflect on throughout 2020. And so what I wanted to do was come in early and change the display on the classroom doors from what I had for a week of respect to now what's your one little word. So I'm going to do that right now, and then I'll check in with you in a second. It's my lunch break now. I thought I would take a sec and just check in. So my students are still working on the ion-dipole stations. The idea that I had yesterday of making more stations was a very good one because I felt like today things are going a lot more smoothly. My class yesterday that I started the stations with, I still have not had class with them yet. That's actually what I have next period. So hopefully the next class period will be a little bit smoother as well. Overall, I think the kids are doing great. In the past, I have used QR codes for the kids to check their answers. However, just by walking around, I've been able to kind of look and see what they're doing and asking if they needed any points of clarification or needed some help. So I really think that the station set's going really well and the kids are getting a lot out of it. I mean, at least I can clearly see that the kids are learning the content that they need to learn. So hopefully I can expect the same during the next class period. But either way, I will check in a little bit later. It is the end of the day on Friday. Made it through. Second day back from break. Down, but man, I am tired. Like, I really did take a break. I relaxed, watched a lot of TV. There was a Simpsons marathon on. I watched more Simpsons than I ever had in my life, and I'm still like back the second day from break and exhausted already. It's crazy. But it was a good set of days. I am happy, even though I had to work really hard to make sure that the stations were ready for the students. I'm really glad that I did that. I think that was a really good approach. It got the kids up and moving and talking and chatting, and I think it was a really good thing. Like I said, though, it was a little tough for me to kind of just make sure everything was prepared. But I never really talked to you guys about like what the stations were. So I have always talked about how I believe in the power of choice and the kids taking ownership over their own learning. So this set of stations was different in that I allowed the students to make choices as far as which stations that they could complete. And I don't know if I mentioned this already, but this was specifically focusing on our unit on intermolecular forces, specifically ion-dipole interactions. And so with the stations, there were a total of 5 of them. There was only one station that was required out of all 5. And so basically that station was used to give the students the content that they needed to understand the ion-dipole interaction. And then the other stations really helped them to apply the knowledge. So station 1 was called the practice station, where the students were given a puzzle. They had to piece the puzzle pieces together. And then there was a series of questions that I created to help them understand how to write dissociation equations and how to model the interaction, specifically the ion-dipole interaction. So they had to analyze that model and then ultimately construct another model for different ion-dipole interactions. After the students did that, they had choices of stations 2 through 5. Station 2 specifically focused on the types of interactions using models. So there's this really great model kit. I think it's called 3D Molecular Designs. I believe that's the company that makes it. And so they make these like really cool cups of water. It's like, they're awesome. And so with these cups of water, the kids actually have molecules to play around with, and they have magnets attached to them. So you could actually very clearly see the attractions between the ions and the water molecules. And so the students were able to have a little bit more of a hands-on approach to learning about that ion-dipole interaction. The third station was a reading station. So I always try to incorporate chem matters into my classes as much as possible. And so there's this great article called Salting Roads, which allowed my students to see an application of, essentially this ion-dipole interaction. When you put salt on, ice, what's actually happening. So they had the option to do some reading with that and then reflect on the reading. Station 4 was a laboratory exercise where we use diaper gel, and the students take a series of 6 compounds and they kind of sprinkle these compounds on top of the diaper gel that has already been saturated with water. And they make some observations, they try to construct an explanation using patterns, and then I do ask them to construct an explanatory model for that as well. And then the 5th station was an energetics station, solution energetics actually. So this was more like for the students that are thinking about going into AP and they're going to be asked questions about, expanding the solute, expanding the solvent, and then, the interaction that results when the solute and solvent mix together. So that gave them a chance to reflect on exothermic versus endothermic. But you can see, like, by having just one station for the students to focus on and get the content, they were able to give what they're learning context by doing the other stations. And I absolutely loved it. I have always spent a lot of time creating stations for the students. I mean, it takes a crazy amount of time, especially if you do it with your kids. It's very time consuming to create, to set up, make sure your directions are very clear. And then of course the cleanup is a little crazy, but fortunately my students are absolutely wonderful and they always help me clean up. Having the choices, I didn't feel like I had to create as many stations. Nor did I feel like really pressed for time, or like that the kids were pressed for time, because usually when I require all the stations, the kids are like trying to finish like in a hurry, and like the kids like want to move to the next station, but there's already kids occupying it, so it can be a little testy. So in the future, if I ever have the opportunity to create another set of stations where maybe they're not all required, I'm definitely going to do that. It was a really great way to end the first week back from break, so I think it was really good. The other thing that I found helpful was, again, just sharing those norms with the kids, because this was the first set of stations I've ever done with these classes. So by talking to the students about the different norms, they were able to know what to expect and when to expect it. And then also, and I'm sure like most of us do this, but sometimes like when we share norms with our students, we don't necessarily tell them why. And I always believe in telling your students why you are doing the things that you do. So for example, like one of my norms or expectations for station learning is that, right, there's only supposed to be 2 pairs of students at a particular station when they're working in the lab tables. So, and I tell them it's from a safety perspective. It's also important that they get the most out of the station, and if there's a million people at the station, they're not going to be able to see what's going on. So sharing that information with the kids helps them to realize, like, why am I doing what I'm doing, and it kind of gives them a little bit more context as far as why it's important that they do the stations a certain way. So it is now 3:35, not bad. I am going to get out of here and enjoy my weekend. And I just hope that you had a great week with your students and you're enjoying time back with your kids. And if you haven't gone back, lucky you. I hope you have a great week next week. And I will be sure to check in with you next week.